Hello, everybody. It is your host, KG82 Live, aka the Fall Brawlers. I am here with no, I'm not. My co-host is missing after a few weeks ago. He said his shoulders can take up any loss, but apparently not a last-second touchdown by Mr. Wilson. So, two new guests today. My new co-host for the week is Mr. Clucky, Mr. Ross. How we doing, my man?
I'm doing great. How you doing, Curb?
Doing good, doing good. And our guest for the first time, I believe, in YarskCap history, we got the two-time Sackos, Mr. Jared and Kennius. Jared, how are we doing, my man?
Thanks for having me on tonight.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So I guess, you know what? We're just going to dive in, ask a few fun questions. I mean, a lot of the times we like rearing in fantasy football, but last interview we pivoted a little bit and talked gambling with Josh. For you, the big question with your early season roster wasn't your team. It was how your defensive coordinator abilities went as an actual head coach of your high school football team. So you want to go have a quick summary of your season, and heard it was a little bit tough, man. What are your thoughts?
Well, here's the thing, guys. We came out and we played pretty tough teams, away. But then we just started to suck. Our closest game was 9 points to a team that had 3 wins. It really just comes down to poor execution. Nothing that the coaches have done. It's really just poor execution. But we're moving on to next year. Hopefully, it's at least get 1 win under our belts. We finished 0-9. I think we were the 36th ranked 4A school out of 40. So I mean, we were really there. We were almost there. I think next year we can really compete with like Xavier and state champions.
So to clarify, you do know this is a growing podcast in the Iowa area, and you have players that might be watching this. It has nothing to do with coaching, and it is all because your players can execute. That's the message you want to send your team next year?
Oh, no, they know I'm kidding. But
yeah, now you got a little nervous, didn't you?
There's a couple, play calls lacked for my end. I mean, obviously, if you go and look at, I'll just run through the scores here. Gave up 34 points, 42, 27, 36. The last 4 games, it was 40s and up. So really, it came down to the scheme. 40-0, 40-7. 41-6, 42-0, and 42-7 really helped out the point per game there.
Yeah, that's a little bit rough, but you know what? The coach's job is to try to maximize the ability of his players, not make the players fit in the scheme. So maybe that's something you can look in the mirror, but you know what? Enough to worry about that. Ross, I mean, I'm going to open up to you. Your last second, what are your initial thoughts or questions that you have for our guest today?
Before we started on the podcast, Kirby had said he was going back through some older podcasts that we had done, and specifically the one down in Texas, where I gave a shout out to Jared, and I gave some friendly advice at that time that was stop trading with Zach. Now that I think that probably is advice that we could spread across the league. That's not just specific to Jared. But in relation to that, Jared, how do you feel like you've done on the trading block throughout the year?
Well, I've definitely had some wins. Sapp traded me a broken Patty Mahomes, but he gave me a pretty good Devontae Adams for I think Kittle and Harris. I think. Mm-hmm. But overall, I mean, if you look at my roster, Ross, it is either trade or free agency. So I'm kind of riding with all of the poor trades, but I think I did good with saying no to you, especially with the news lately. And yeah, Zach just has this appeal to him where it's just like, hey, you got to do this. Come on. This is good for you. This is good for you. Come on, do it. And yeah, so I usually fall in that trap sometimes, but there's a way to approach me with trading. gentlemen, and Kirby and I were kind of talking about this. Sap struggles with it. He got better. But insulting me is not the way to go. If we go back through it, Ross, it was just like, you said something. I can't remember. I was like, okay, all right. Well, here's the thing. I have the guy you want. I'm not going to take this third string running back that had 2 good games. Not going to do it.
So now that you're bringing it up, Jared, why don't you just run through the trade that we discussed? And we'll get Kirby's take on it.
So I don't even know the guy's first name, but it's Hilliard for Tennessee for Jamal Williams. And if we all look at Ross's roster, we know that he has injury-prone DeAndre Swift. So he asked me if I wanted this guy. I said, I don't even know who that is. So I said no. And then it went on for about 9 hours about Ross telling me how I needed to do this and how my team was bad and how frankly, it was one that he came out. So if I use frankly a lot, it's just because Ross said, frankly, Jared, I'm going to talk to you about your roster. It's not very good. And you could see today we kind of went back and forth, banter. But yeah, it was Hilliard for Williams. And I said, no dice.
Yeah, so I guess I can give my quick 2 cents on it. Obviously, me being an avid Titans fan, I've watched pretty much every game. Last week was the first round I missed some, but I did see Hilliard's breakout run for a touchdown. So last 2 weeks, Hilliard's ran really well. I think the concerns for the Titans are just their offense in general. Titans obviously have their bye week this week, which means you don't get Hilliard for this week. And also the pass catching running back for the Titans, Jeremy McNichols, he's actually scheduled to come back after the bye. And typically he's going to take a lot of that pass catching work away, and Deontay Foreman's run well as well. So with the limited offense and the 3 running backs there, I would rather take the guaranteed production of Williams this week and next week. And with the Lions not being very good and Swift banged up multiple times this year, they potentially could shut him down. And so I think there's more upside with the Lions running back being the one solo guy there, as opposed to the Titans running back, who at best case, he's in a 3-headed timeshare on an offense that hasn't produced. So if it was me, I hold on to Jamal Williams, but that's my 2 cents.
So Kirby, I completely agree with 95% of your points.
That's pretty good.
That was very hard to get through Jared's head, and apparently it's aloof to you as well, is
it's something that
Jared's next 2 games matter.
Now, why do you think that the third string running back for the Titans is going to do anything in weeks 16 and 15?
Valid. So one of the operational points that I made during this trade was hoping Jared did not consider Jeremy McNichols. He's the bugaboo in my whole trade that I was hoping he would overlook, which he did because he never brought that up. However, take Jeremy McNichols out of the scenario, which is possible because Jeremy McNichols looked like absolute trash all season. He maybe had like 1 decent game where he'd been okay as a starter.
Not true.
It is.
I've watched the games, Ross. They might not look like a stack line, but he's better.
Look at his point totals though. Would you ever want to start him other than like 2 games?
It's not magic. Titans are not playing fantasy football. They want someone that's doing pass protection. They don't give a shit about what your fantasy totals are.
I know.
He's better in he's looking better in pass protection than every other running back.
I'm just pulling up his stat line real quick. On the season, 46 points. Highest scoring game, 12.5.
Are the Titans playing fantasy football? How are the fantasy points reflected in passing blocks?
That's my point, though, is say Jeremy McNichols comes in at lead back for the rest of the season. He's played league back during this season, and he sucked.
Says we're not going to agree on this, but here's the thing. You took away McNichols in your scenario. Why can't Jared take away Swift in his scenario?
No, that's true. I offered this trade. He would forget about Jeremy McNichols. Take Jeremy McNichols out of this situation, Hillard looks fantastic. He scored 12.5 and 17.5. The first game he played, he had 8 receptions. He was basically the operating Jeremy McNichols, who had a better game than Jeremy McNichols the entire season as backup. Because he is backup. Hillard right now technically is backup behind Deontay Foreman.
And Hilliard. And McNichols.
Well, yes, not the. I mean, the two games he played, he was only back behind Deontay Foreman. In those 2 games he played, he definitely outscored Deontay Foreman the last game. I did not know about the game before that, but he
did both games.
He did, okay, because he far out received him the first game as well.
Yep.
So
he's played very well, and if there was no McNichols, I think it would be a different conversation. But he's going to lose the pass catching work, which is some of his points, to McNichols, and that's just my 2 cents. But the one I will give Jared kudos on 2 trades this year. Just I guess the best trade Jared did and the worst. Obviously, getting Ezekiel Elliott and getting rid of the Hurton CMC trade, that was by far the biggest win for Jared's team. Don't know if I necessarily agreed with shipping Zeke off the staff, but I think the worst trade was kind of a low-key one, was when he dealt away Chuba Hubbard, because he held on to Chuba and trading away CMC for Justin Fields when he already had Tom Brady. So that was probably my least favorite deal of Jared's. And just because Tom Brady was done well this year, he was chasing the goat of Justin Fields being a running quarterback to get points, but Brady was producing and Chuba was the real deal. And if he just held on to him, I thought he would have potentially gotten a few more wins this year, getting closer to that 4-win range as opposed to the 2 he stuck at.
Yeah, man, looking back, that Zeke trade kind of killed me. And that 3-way trade, I can't remember what the details were, but I got Kittle, or I traded Kittle away. Yeah, it's been a trading nightmare for me sometimes. But, when you're 0-5, you get that feeling like, shit, this is going to be another 0-16 season. So then you start shipping the guys away that are doing well for somebody who has more upside, or maybe who has, in a better position. But, one day I'll learn not to trade all the time, but.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Jared. Have most of your trades been you receive 2 players, giving up 1 player?
Some have.
Your roster, that's what it looks like you would have done.
I think a lot of them were around that. Yeah, it hasn't really been 1 for 1.
Because you've had a ton of big name players on your roster at some point in the season. And then if we look at it now,
I had Kittle on my roster twice. I drafted him, then I traded him, and then I traded back for him. So he's been it's a roller coaster of emotions when I trade, Ross. It's like instant regret most of the time.
It's a roller coaster for us too, Jared.
To his credit, he traded away Kittle and Harris and got back the Devontae Adams. That's one scenario where he did well.
Yeah.
There's just other areas where a lot of times it seems like it looks like Jared's typically getting 1 more player. There's been a few exceptions though. So, I mean, it seems kind of even actually, all things considered, with how it's been done.
I feel like the Fields trade was the injury reserved in the bye week plague, where I had like 3 or 4 on injured reserve and 2 of them are bye weeks, and I just needed a running back of some sort. So that was part of it. I remember that one. But, just got to survive and advance in the Sacco tournament. That's all I know. Win that 1 game, don't get that championship.
That kind of leads into my question I wanted to ask. Obviously, you're destined for the Sacco for the third straight year, I think. And so I guess my question is, and I don't want to make it too easy for you, take Shane's team out of it, because I think if you had any choice of playing someone in the Sacco, it would be Sap. Take Sap out of it. Who would you want to play in the Sacco for your best possible chance of trying to get a win?
Let me take a look at.
I can kind of scroll through some teams and show them on the screen if it makes it easier for you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on my phone, so that would be great.
Yeah, I'll share it really quick. And then if you have any teams in mind, we can kind of focus in on that. But so I'll kind of go near the bottom of the standings. And so here are what they have for some of the other teams right here. We got Sap's team here. So Hill's Built's team, who lost CMC, obviously. Schultes is right over here. Or if it would just help to just kind of pull up the standings. Do you have anyone in mind that you're kind of just eyeing down, or is it pretty much just pray to God you play Sap and go from there?
I'm checking out Built's roster. I don't know what the Buffalo schedule looks like, but Josh Allen always scares me. Even though they've kind of had a down couple stretches here where it's not been the best. I mean, he's averaging what, 23 points probably, 24. Yep.
So he's actually the number one quarterback right now.
So yeah, that scares me. The Miles Sanders injury, the Cooper injury history. Shit. Nobody and say Sap.
So yeah, I think Sap is like this week. He's currently set to start 2 flexes. His receivers are Devontae Smith and Traquan Smith, and his bench really isn't showcasing much better. Jarvis Landry is next best. So I think Sap is kind of the team you keep an eye on, and Sap's got to hope Zeke stays healthy with the knee, where he's still going to currently play this week, but it's getting a little dicey, and you never know when they might rest him a few weeks. So rest him now before Sacco playoffs.
They gotta lock up. For me, they gotta lock up a playoff position early here and then rest them into the playoffs. That's what they gotta do. If anybody, I'm gonna go with probably Schultes' team, I guess. But I don't want Schultes' team. I want Sap. I want Sap.
He wants Sap. That's pretty cut and dry. Well, I mean, that's kind of the 2 kind of quick hitting items I want to touch base on. Ross, do you have any last messages for Jared? I know we talked about you guys' potential trade enough and kind of veered off for a little bit there.
Nope, that's all I got. Still a little salty.
If you want to reconsider who you want him for now, since he's going to be starting for at least 2 weeks and maybe more, send me a trade. We'll talk about it.
I'm not that interested.
It's going to be very interesting because if Ross is a vet, if he's gone 3 weeks and Jamal all of a sudden is starting that first week of the playoffs for Ross, it could be interesting. But I think if Ross loses this week, it could be another conversation where maybe he'll come back to you. So it's not necessarily we're done now. Just wait a week and see what happens.
Because I can always just throw Zach a Jamal trade. See what he wants.
That would make Ross very happy, I bet.
I'm sure you would get great offers, Jared.
I know. Zach's team's a little bit battered, but you know what? Battered with all the injuries. But we'll kind of jump into that when we have the first edition of the Roscoe rankings. But before that, I think we got to touch base quickly on last week's matchup. I mean, the number one matchup that I kind of had highlighted that I feel like we have to talk about was even though it wasn't the big ender, it was Josh versus Built. So Built, despite being a powerhouse team all year with all of his running backs, lost CMC this week, and he goes down to Josh with only scoring 82 points to Josh's 87, and that's behind Dak having a big game. And so Josh now has a 1-game lead, and Built, who's been the top 3 for almost all the power rankings, is now sitting on the outside looking in. And so that was my big highlighted matchup. Any other matchups that you guys kind of have this week, or do we just need to talk about Kyler and Zach's matchup and the heartbreaking experience?
No, I agree. I think it's Built and Sap this week, correct?
Yes. And so that's the matchup that I had highlighted next week. So I think that's going to be an elimination. Whoever loses officially in the Sacco. So
yep.
Get your popcorn ready.
So the Built Sap and the Schultes and Axman are the 2 marquee matchups to solidify, in my opinion, the Yarski playoffs.
Schultes plays me this week.
Who is?
Schultes plays me this week. I think Axman plays Pooty.
Axman
That's the big one. because those two teams
Next
are
week.
both.
I'm talking next week.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yes, next
Yeah,
week.
sorry.
But yeah, next week that's the two
Plays
matchups.
Pooty.
Yep, those are the two matchups I think we'll touch base on for next week. But we got to at least laugh a little bit at the reason Zach texted me this morning is like, Kirby, I'm getting tired out of fantasy football. I just can't do it anymore. I'm getting burned out. It's the same thing that happened last year. Because when he texted me that's the reason I listen to old pods. Once he starts losing, he gets all sad and deletes Twitter and all that stuff. So hopefully we get him back next week. But losing in epic fashion of Russell Wilson, it was icing on the cake. And the fact that interception for the 2-point conversion didn't count against Luddy was just cinema at its finest. I love that everyone was up for it, giving him shit. So it was beautiful.
I was pumped during that game.
Oh my God, because you got the ulterior motive of trying to go for that first round bye, and that last week matchup, so long as you win, you control your destiny. If you win out, you get the 1 week bye. So it's huge.
I do. So between Kyler, Zach, and myself, very interesting matchups for the rest of the year. We just had the Zach Kyler phenomenal matchup, extremely exciting all the way to the end. Now we have myself and Kyler this week, who would be a highlighted matchup in my mind, because that really will tell the tale for buy or no buy. And then it goes to Zach and myself. So it's really just Busch Light League button heads at the top of the league to see who's gonna end up where.
I know, and that bye is something that you can't measure how important that is, because just getting that 1 week free. I know Zach's team was the number 1 seed almost all of last year, lost to Staff the last week of the regular season, and lost in the first round just like that. So you can't measure how important that bye is. But we'll talk about the next week's matchups here quickly. But before then, Ross, we need your inaugural Roscoe ranking. So I'm going to share the screen, and then I'm going to let you take it away, where we're going to start at the 10 hole and go maybe 10 through 7. And then we'll just do a quick comments on what me and Jared think. And let's just get to the break. Jared, you're number 10, my man.
Yeah. It is what it is. I knew that.
So just to preface, these power rankings are for the end of regular season. So I actually dived in and looked at each matchup for the remainder of the season, picked my winners based on their lineup for that week. So I took buys into account. I took a little bit of injuries into account, but that was pretty difficult. So more or less, those are accounted for. So Jared, obviously at the bottom, unfortunately, you can win out the rest of the season and nothing changes. So do whatever you want to do for the rest of the season. It's irrelevant. I suggest you hunt the waivers.
15 and 16. Just look at those matchups. Look at those defenses who they're playing week 15 and 16, and try and snipe the best one now. That's kind of the go forward plan that I would approach once you're locked in Sacco.
Yep. I was honestly looking at the possibility of Jared having an upset. And then I thought to myself, oh my God, that would be the stupidest thing Jared could do at this point is win. Take that waiver order and you snipe that waiver list every week. That is your best bet. That's
the one thing he does have, because he still played till the end. He won $10 for the highest points in a week. So he's $10 richer for getting that. But obviously the worst thing is getting the ball stack. But $10 richer isn't a bad consolation prize.
Yeah, I'd pay $10 not to have a ball sack in my living room for a year.
All right, we talked enough about Jared. Let's focus on the next three, my man.
All right. So next, and this actually, I had to look into this a little bit. So the next one I'm going to have is Sap. Not too much of a surprise. There is the possibility of him trying to make movement, but it's just not going to happen, I don't think. I think he's going to lose to Built, and he's going to lose to Pooty in the upcoming 2 weeks. I do think the matchup with Built this week is going to be close, though. That's why I highlighted as a big matchup this week that could turn some tables, not significant tables. But I do think that'll be a close one. So I have Sap at number 9. Coming in at number 8, large variation from what Zach has had for a good majority of his power rankings, because although I love the podcast and I love y'all's insights, I think Zach loses sight of where his power rankings are going sometimes. And he just looks at players, which at this point in the season is irrelevant. Your record speaks a lot more than your lineup does. So at number 8, I have Jacob Bill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, go to 7, then we'll get our comments.
Okay. And then at number 7, this was also a type 1. I have Mr. Axman. And actually, I have him beating Kyler this week. Is it this week? Yes. I have him beating Kyler.
Actually, no, you play Kyler.
I play Kyler.
Axe plays Pooty. Your go forward schedule thing's a little bit
Kyler
off.
next. Yeah, he plays Kyler
last
next.
week.
Yes, I actually have him beating him that week due to Kyler's buys. Jonathan Taylor's on a buy, and he has one other player that's a significant player on a buy. That's going to take a big kick in the balls to his point total. So I have beaten them that week.
All right, Jared, let's just quick review, Jared. What do you think of the 7 through 9 slot? And then I'll get my comments quick.
It's pretty spot on, honestly. I mean, you're looking at Axman's roster. He's got a couple injury-prone guys. I mean, Saquon, Dak could go down. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, his wide receivers. Hey, Axman, if you need a running back, come talk to me. I have one. But I just disagree with number 10. I really think that I'm going to be making a move here soon. But no, it looks like it's pretty on par with what I would say. The built one is a little surprising, but I see where Ross is coming from with that one.
I think your bottom 2, I think I agree wholeheartedly. Sapp's roster, I just don't happen to like as much. He's got Zeke and Kittle that are elite players, but his receivers and flex are just too weak in my opinion. Bilt's team, I think we always had him a little bit higher because of the Christian McCaffrey effect, and we always assumed him to go off. Now that he's out for the year, though, his team isn't nearly as formidable, so I 100% get the drop. Like, my train dropped after Henry, you have to drop after that. The one thing I'm curious about is Bilt. If we think Bilt's going to win this week against Shane, I think his last week's matchup might be against – I'm not sure who his last week's matchup is.
It's you.
Oh, yeah, that could be a little tough for him. I thought he had to play Jared, but so him probably in the 8th slot is probably fair, projecting him to go 1-1. And Axe, I think I liked him in the 6th spot before all the injuries hit him. With Chubb on a bye this week and Waller being hurt, I did like his pickup of Foster Moreau, so no matter what, he's just got the tight end for the Raiders. But I think him in the 7th slot is probably about right. So overall, I think I actually agree with the order of your bottom 4. So let's jump through 6 through 4, and then we can get our comments on those.
So I'll start with 6, and my 6th slot has everything to do with my 7th slot. So looking at Axe, he and Schultes, I'm projecting to both end up in the season 7-7. So I'm having Schultes have a close one with Kirby this week, but still losing, and then beating Jared next week. So he'll finish 7-7. Now, if you look at the heads-to-heads, so we have 2 7-7 teams between Axe and Schultes. Schultes actually wins out with point totals, I believe, and head-to-head.
Yeah, I think those point totals are going to be a tiebreaker for a lot, because I feel like we're going to have a lot of 7-7 teams. So those point totals are going to be big. Score all those points, boys.
Yep. So that I got Schultes rounding off the Yarski. And my next one at 5, it pains me to say this, but in the state of my current roster and my injuries, I have myself at number 5. I am projecting myself 2 losses to finish the regular season, to Kyler, followed by Zach. I got Swift out. I got Debo out. I got an injured Kyler Murray that's trying to make his way back. I don't have a whole lot of prospects outside those guys. And I got RB1 with a pin in his finger that could get dislodged at any time. So I'm being realistic. I'm putting myself at another 7-7 team that wins out against Schultes and Max based on heads to heads throughout the season and point totals. So got myself at number 5.
And a number 4 slot, and then we'll give our review.
Okay. So for number 4, I have an 8-6 team projected to finish the season. Mr. Taylor Pudens. So with that, let me pull up his rest of his season real quick.
He's got Axe this week, and I think he's got Shane next week, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, so he's 6-6 right now. I'm projecting him to finish 8-6. He blows up the point board. His starters right now are, last week they scored 141 points. They're averaging 124. So I have no problems with him winning the next 2 games. And then I have him splitting head to head with the next 8-6 team. And then we know he split head to head with me. And then I think he has higher point to, I don't know. That's where I have number 4.
Yeah, no, but don't go too into the weeds, my man. I love the work behind it. The 6th spot, I think I kind of agree with you. Schultes' team is interesting just because Kamara might be coming back and he can go off for a 5-6 touchdown game like he did last year in the championship weekend that you just couldn't be in. So Schultes' team has some upside, but I think as the state of his team right now, he's fair. Your team, I think, is correct finishing in the 7-7 spot. It's solely because injuries, but like you said, you still have 2 weeks where you're pretty locked into the playoffs. You just need to get in, and then you could fight for that wild card round, or you somehow pull out a win this week. It all comes down to 1 week against Zach for the bye. So as of right now, I think it's fair. And Pooty, we've harped on it all year where we do love his team. Me and Zach seem to love his team. One of the biggest trades he made was getting Joe Mixon and Keenan Allen for the Minnesota running backs, and now Dalvin Cook is hurt. And so he's got 2 elite players at their position, trading away a guy who ended up getting injured, but Zach does have his backup. So that was a season-saving move for Pooty. He got a lot more depth at key positions. And overall, I like his team. And I told him last week, I want him to lose just so I don't have a chance of playing him. But that's not going to be how it works. Jared, do you got any comments on the 4 through 6 spot, or are you ready to jump into the top 3?
I would say if Ross is the only thing that's putting you at 5 in my eyes is like what Kirby said, is the injuries. Otherwise, I would have had you switch with Pooty, to be honest. But 2-1, sir.
Hurts me. Hopefully Debo has a quick turnaround. A lot of people tried to capitalize on his injury, offering me trades this week. Wasn't going to happen, but I appreciate
a man's got to at least do the due diligence. You're the
There was a
expert.
lot of people, Curb. A lot.
Okay, who was the other one? I got to at least know. I'll openly say I offered DJ
I'm pretty
Moore.
sure I don't remember if I got one from Zach or not. Definitely got one from Sap. Multiple from Sap. Tried to shit Taysom Hill onto my doorstep for a few hours one day.
Well, Zach, did he try trading you AJ Brown? Because he tried doing that with me, I know.
No, I'm trying. Maybe he didn't even offer me one. I mean, Jared tried to take Debo for Jamal, but that wasn't going to happen.
Oh, well, hey, it doesn't hurt to at least send it out. I mean, the least you can do is send it out and just don't be annoying and keep resending it and being an asshole about it. But Let's just jump into the top 3.
All right. So for number 3, I have another projected 8-6 team, and it's going to be Kyler. So the reason I have him over Pooty, who I'm also projecting at 8-6, is because if you look at their head-to-heads, they split it. But point differential wise, Kyler scored a lot more points than Pooty did in his win weeks. So I don't know if that's how they take
it's total points on the year, actually, not in those matchups. So in the end, you might be switching around Pooty and Buddy. We're doing a quick pivot then right here.
We probably will.
I respect that. It's a little bit. I can see how that can get misconstrued, but it's total points on the year. Because if you happen to
Okay.
play a week where someone had a bipocalypse, it's not fair.
Yeah. Yeah. And Pooty earned it. He's put up points all season. If that's going to be the kicker, he deserves to have it. All right. And then for our top two, both finishing the season at a projected 10-4. I have Zach at number 2, followed by Kirby.
Feels good to be back up there.
It's
It's been a little bit. I know. I had a nice
Mhm.
run. Henry got hurt, but luckily Gibson's rounded into form, and obviously my big move was trading away Jonathan Taylor, which sucked for a few hours there when he went bonanza, but Eckler's done well and Deontay's done well. And low key, one of my luckier moves was when I did a trade earlier with Jared. We had him throw in a receiver, and I said I wanted Julio Jones to be included as the wide receivers. Like, I can't trade Julio. He's going to be a stud when he comes back. I'll give you Waddle. And Waddle has low key been a top 15 receiver ever since I've gotten him. So I actually backed into a lucky one there. So I like how the team's looking, and Zach has been battling injuries. His flex this week is looking rough, but luckily for his running backs that are hurt, he has the handcuffs, so he's still playing them. But he's been battling some injuries, and so it's going to be interesting to see how his team does going forward. And Buddy, I like his team. He just needs the Seahawks to get right with Russell Wilson. I mean, their offense looks abysmal, and it's going to be tough for Kyler with Jonathan Taylor out for the bye week, but he'll be back for the fantasy playoffs, and that's when he really needs him. So overall, I think I kind of liked your top 10 rankings. I think some of the interesting ones, the closest ones I have are between Axe and Schultz and who gets that last spot. So
Yep.
we'll just kind of see what happens in the final weeks and go from there.
Yep. That's definitely going to be the spot to watch. I think it's going to be really hard for Built to dig himself out of the hole he's in. So I think he's destined for the Sacco. And then, like I said before at the start of the pod, it's going to be a slugfest between Zach, myself, and Luddy for the remainder of the season.
Beautiful, beautiful. Jared, you got any thoughts about the top 3, or do we want to just talk really quickly on the matchups for next week and kind of wrap it up for the people?
No, I mean, I agree with that. It seems like the Chiefs are getting their act together, so that could bring Tyreek back into being one of those top receivers that Luddy has. So, I mean, Luddy's team could be scary down the stretch if the Chiefs and everybody. I mean, he's got a pretty good lineup there. So,
yep, absolutely. I think Luddy's one of the interesting teams where I think his team has a whole bunch of like stacked rosters. Where he's got Tyreek and the Chiefs together, he's got Seattle and Lockett together. And so if it just happens to find a week where the Chiefs and the Seahawks go off, I mean, he could be sitting very pretty. So with that in mind, go ahead.
His running back room is just phenomenal, it seems like.
Yes, he does.
Taylor and Connor, and then you got Jacobs, and you got Edmonds when he comes back. So he's shit. I'm calling it. I think Luddy wins it, gentlemen.
Wins it. Wow.
I do have Luddy circled as the dark horse on the season. I think the only little bit of a shit stain he has on his roster is Russell Wilson, who you never know could get Zach together in the end of the season. But other than that, there are very few weak spots on his roster. Tyler Lockett always can have a big game. Mike Gesicki always can have a big game. So never know.
Luddy is going to absolutely love this here in the pod this week. But with that in mind, guys, we got to touch really quickly on the key matchups for next week and then wrap it up. Ross, you kind of teased some of your big matchups already. You want to kind of go into a little bit more depth on who we're doing, and we'll kind of showcase what the week rankings are here on the screen.
Yeah. So you're talking about for this coming week or next week?
So week 13. So this coming week that we have that we're talking about the matchups.
Yeah. So by and large, we're looking at what's going to determine the Sacco this week. With that, we're also looking at what's going to determine a chance for a bye. So with that is Built versus Sap down in the Sacco.
So we got his team. Bill's team is ranked 86th this week, the 5th best team, and Sap is ranked 9th this week. So advantage Bilt there, which kind of lines up with what we've been saying.
Yep, definitely. I would be pretty shocked to see Sap come away with this one. And then the other marquee matchup, I would say it has to be, if you're looking down the season and what this week basically stands for, is Kyler versus me.
Yep, and so that's obviously a position for who's going to be able to get the bye. And right now, I think with your injuries, it hurts your team score, obviously. And Kyler, they have as the 3rd strongest team this week with a 93, as opposed to your team with the 85. And your weak spot, obviously, is your receivers, and that's without having Debo. All of a sudden, it just becomes a little bit weaker. So understandably, it's going to be a tough week, but that's why they play the game. We have upsets like Jared beating Bilt, even when he had CMC. So you never know what the guys do on the field, and so that's what's beautiful.
Definitely.
And the last matchup, really quickly, because obviously it's a huge playoff implications. Pootie versus Josh, with Pootie's roster, who we all love, and so does Fantasy Pros. They have him as the 2nd strongest team, versus Josh, who's the 7 slot, where he won last week, but he scored less than 90 points. I don't think that's going to get it done against Pootie. So his guys better become to play. It's tough without Chubb, one of his horse running backs, and Saquon hasn't looked the same, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. And I think those are the 3 matchups we'll all be watching and kind of go from there. But with that, guys, is there any lasting comments? And Jared, the one thing I forgot to ask at the end, do you have any questions for me or Ross that you want to kind of end the pod with? We can give you some closing comments to kind of put us on the spot if you want to.
You know, I don't have anything much. I just want to know Ross's tactics. Hey, did you think that you were going to achieve your goal after you started insulting my team? Or like, I just want to know the process, the thought behind that.
So if you look at how it started, the whole conversation, it was really, this is how we can help each other. I didn't come out at like Zach typically does, is like, look what I'm giving up for you to make you the best team in the league. You know, I can't get myself to do that. I'm not a groveler. So it was more of a give and take. You know, you need this, Hillard, tons of upside. I just need an insurance guy. Let's make this happen. And then once I felt like it was so hard to get certain points across to you. So you're like, oh, Hillard's on a bye this week. Why would I want Hillard? I
need a running back.
Jared, this week doesn't matter. None of the rest of the regular season matters at all.
Hey, you know what? Here's my thought process. Is I fight to the very end. All right. I'm gonna fight and claw for every inch I have. And if Jamal Williams gives me that, I'm gonna keep him. You know, and that's what he's doing for me right now.
The ultimate anti-Biggs right there. That is the biggest anti-Biggs comment that I've ever heard. Ross, you're in the league because Biggs left, and Biggs would give up so early. And Jared is a fighter, damn it. You wrestle on, baby.
No, I got nothing.
That's all I gotta say. That is a beautiful way to wrap it up. Thank you, Jared, for jumping on as a first-time guest. Can't wait to have you on again next year. Roscoe, a hell of a job with the inaugural Roscoe rankings. Hopefully I will have my co-host back, but until then, have a great week, everybody, and we'll talk to you all next week.
See you,
See you, Ross.
Later.